how could I make that shift more comfortable? And just that slight shift of wording, that, and it seems like such a small thing, but after a while, you get so good at that it becomes second nature, that you start to only think helpful thoughts.
That was Caleb Quillen of the Kansas City Symphony talking about reframing, thinking about your own playing and your own improvement. It's such a great interview, and we have more from him as well as several other people in this best of episode. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and today's topic is persistence, which comes up time and time again. We could probably do 24 episodes like this on persistence. So we're hearing from 5 folks today. Karl Fenner of the Atlanta Symphony, Kristin Korb, past president of the International Society of Bassists and just a fabulous jazz artist living in Europe. James Oesi, who started the Dutch Double Bass Festival and is active in all sorts of different capacities. Then Caleb Quillen, who you just heard at the outset. And we follow him up with Leon Bosch, who I just love having on the episode. Have to have him on a best of episode for sure. I'd like to thank our sponsors. We're going to give them a quick shout out here at the beginning and then just roll the episode. They are the Bass Violin Shop, Steve Swan String Bass, A440, Upton Bass, and D'Addario Strings. Thank you so much, and you can learn more about them in future and past episodes and go to our website. We got them all linked up there. So let's dig in, first of all, with the Atlanta Symphony's Karl Fenner.
You have to be very, very vigilant and diligent in your own continuing education. Because, one thing I've learned is that when you graduate and you get your degrees, that sets you up to have a strong foundation so that you can continue to learn. It's more that than it is you've learned what you need. I mean, there are some people who, they're 22 years old, they're getting their bachelor's degree and they win a job at the New York Philharmonic and they're done. Good for them. Or maybe straight out of master's, they get a job playing in San Francisco and, never take an audition again. But that's not how it is for a lot of us. And so for those of us who are not in that boat, we have to be very, very accountable for our own continued development and have the idea of being a perpetual student, really. And since then, I've had low points, certain auditions that I've had high hopes for, and it didn't work out. And I had much higher expectations for how things were going to go. Without going into the specifics of which auditions, it's always can be devastating and heartbreaking in that moment. But if you have decided ahead of time, and you are committed to the idea that you're going to keep going, you're going to learn from it, you're going to progress from it, then the disappointment will work its way out of your system, and then you go back to the drawing board again. You have to learn to love the process, to love the journey, if you will.
Next up, we've got Kristin Korb, followed by James Oesi, both on the topic of persistence.
I don't know if it's wisdom or not, but I think it's really important for you to do what you love. Yeah. For me early on, it was definitely established that I would not ever be auditioning for orchestras. When I started lessons, it just wasn't, the thought of trying to get through the orchestral literature was just so daunting. And I didn't love it enough to put in the time, and for me, when I heard jazz the first time, it resonated so strongly with me. I was like, all I knew before that was country western. And when I heard jazz, it was like, this is my music. Yeah. And, to be open to the possibilities of what that might mean, and I think, for me coming from Montana, it was like needing that stamp of approval. Am I good enough? Will I be accepted? When you go to college, you get a piece of paper that, you are certified to teach, you know? And then it's like, oh, I'm good enough. But, you know, as an artist, there's none of that, you know, which is, it's kind of scary, but it's really beautiful too, because I think there's a place for all of us. If you love what you do and you're passionate about it, and you let the music come to you and you let the work come to you, you got to be in the game. You got to go. For me, it's important to go and listen to other people and get to know the people in the family and the community and be a part of that family as a contributing member. I think sometimes I go to, not so much ISB, International Society of Bassists Conference, but I've been to other music-type conferences where it's everybody handing out their promo material.
Yeah.
And hire me, you know, it's like, you know, that's not what it's about. I think it's really important for us each to have our mission. Mm-hmm. And that's really up to the individual. For me, my job is to bring joy, beauty, and love into the world, and to teach people how to take care of each other.
It's a very funny thing, because I'm very lucky. I have a really a great partner, boyfriend, and he comes from the jazz world, and he used to work at the jazz radio station here. So he's one of these people who he's a music industry professional, but he's not a musician, and he doesn't come from the classical world. So he looks at things much more in terms of like audience and touring and a bit like how the pop world see things. And it I must say, ever since we've been together, it's given me such a fresh perspective on actually how similar all the different music industries are, and how actually at the end of the day, I mean, as a solo artist, you are connecting with an audience. That's kind of that's kind of your goal. I mean, is you know, you're expressing your music, and you're trying to find the people it will resonate with. Yeah. And the thing is, those people are out there, so that's great. And I sort of think, and that gives me an awful lot of comfort when I get rejected, because I think, yeah, but the people who find what I do great are still going to find it great, even if whatever orchestra doesn't want to play a bass concerto with me. Yes. And that is and it's funny because I sort of also turn it around and I think of like artists I love to listen to and extremely admire. And I think, yeah, I will, you know, somebody said to me once, they said they were actually on the jury of a competition where the criteria that was given to all the jurors was actually really simple. It was simply, would you, with your own money, buy a ticket to this person's concert? And he said, this is how you need to look at things. Because he said, if you actually ask yourself that question very honestly, there are very few people that you would do that for. And he said, but when you do find the people for whom you will buy a ticket to their concert, you will not only buy a ticket to their concert, you will buy their album, you will buy the documentary about their album, you will go, you will visit them when they go on their concert tour. And I thought, he's right. He's absolutely right. Like all the artists that I absolutely love, I cannot get enough of. And even if they have a bad day, even if they have a bad performance, I still will love, I will still love their playing.
How did you manage those inevitable frustrations you must have had?
Yeah, it's really easy to get frustrated.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think what I tried to do, especially in Kansas City, which I felt helped with the success of it, was this idea of cognitive shifting. I know that sounds like a fancy way of just basically like mental replacement. So it's so easy to get down on yourself, right? It's so easy to get in that self-loathing, self-doubt, because that just affects all of us. And I was just thinking of ways to combat that. So because that was a huge part of it for me, I'd be so confident some days, and then the next day I'd be like, I'm never going to win a job. I'm never going to, do this and that. But instead of thinking about that, probably a month before, I started just changing that idea. So if I had that thought appear, I would just replace it with something more positive and more helpful, because whenever you have those thoughts, even if they were true, they're not helpful at all to your audition process, right?
Yeah.
So instead of, I'm not sure about this shift and I don't think that it would be successful if I were to play it, in the audition right now, instead of thinking that, the negative thought, think, how could I make that shift more comfortable? And just that slight shift of wording, that, and it seems like such a small thing, but after a while you get so good at that it becomes second nature, that you start to only think helpful thoughts about the audition, especially if you're putting it to daily practice like you would anything else. So I think you really have to work on the mental preparation too, in that way, making sure you be careful of what enters your mind in the audition process, especially in the practice room, especially when you're running things for people. Think only helpful thoughts and really try to get good at that mental replacement.
A big way that we stay persistent and productive and headed toward our goals is having a daily routine, having things that we rely upon. And Leon Bosch is the master of that. I get so inspired when I hear him talk about the way he works and this accelerated learning model. So here's Leon. This is us sitting outside at a cafe in Lucca, Italy this past summer, chatting about many topics, but also productivity and moving forward on projects. And we'll wrap up the episode with this one. This method for learning at an accelerated pace, rapid learning, if I remember, it's similar to the Pomodoro technique, maybe exactly. Some similarities. 20 or 25 minutes on, and then you take a break.
Yes.
Is that close?
I mean, this is what was so interesting when you talked to me about, we talked last about this method that I had. And you said, well, that's called the Pomodoro method. And I was delighted to discover that I'd invented something which now had a fancy name. And it's in a similar way, I discovered the talent code when I was a youngster. I realized that talent wasn't a question of birthright or something that you were born with, that it was a physiological process and that you needed to do certain things to acquire talent. So I still use something like equivalent to the Pomodoro method. I set myself the intellectual challenge, and also I have a framework of things, what it is that I need to do with a piece when I'm learning it. Being able to play all the notes in the right order is just the first stage. And of course, it's easy to stop there because, we have a world now which apparently values that kind of reliability above artistic creativity or anything more beautiful. But the first stage, of course, is just being able to command the notes and finding proper technical solution. And that's what I mean when I say that Koussevitzky understood the bass in a different way from Bottesini or from Severo or from Kuiper or from anybody else who writes for it. You have to understand how the mind of the composer works and how they understand the instrument. So, for example, if by the time you played 12 Bottesini pieces successfully, then you know how the man works, and then makes everything else much more accessible because you know the fingering patterns, you know what works. So you won't go down an unproductive route. So there has to be this incredible intellectual kind of rigor. The curiosity also is the thing which provides you with energy. Without curiosity, nothing can be accomplished. There are certain kind of eureka moments that have to happen every day, and these eureka moments then propel you in an incredible way. So never stop working for the day until you've had a eureka moment. What was the thing? I was practicing the other day, a piece that I knew, and I suddenly discovered, oh my God, how could I have been so stupid? Because I found the real solution. Often people tell you that there are thousands of solutions to the same problem. Look, of course there are, but there's only ever one right solution. And it's a question of finding out what is the right solution and why, and to be able to explain in a rational manner why you think that's the correct solution.
That's going to do it for this best of episode. Thank you so much to Krista Copper for going through and cataloging and organizing all these topics. It makes these sort of episodes possible, and I think it's a really cool direction. Thank you also to everybody else involved in Contrabass Conversations, Steve Hinchy, Michael Cooper, our audio editors, Mitch Mooring, who puts these episodes together, and Trevor Jones, who publishes and promotes all of these. Thank you so much. Reach out to me at feedback@contrabassconversations.com. And I am your host, Jason Heath. We'll be back soon with more life on the low end of the spectrum.